Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Coach and Benway podcast. I'm Coach Red Pill. I'm joined by my co-host, Dr. Benway. And today we're going to be talking about actors. And I think that this is an interesting topic. Dr. Benway, why don't you fill us in and take us away?
Yes, so I have a feeling not a feeling, I can point to the past episodes. Whenever we talk about, be it film or entertainment or anything other than that, we usually anchor it on a director. And I think implicitly we think of like a directorial vision as sort of leading the way. It's easy to see how we do that. We're film fans. That's the big theory that everybody loves to espouse. But I think, the idea I had to kind of pivot that a little bit was just the degree to which I wanted to talk about James Woods.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for any great particular theme, but just because I think the man is interesting. He's actively evolved in our political sphere on Twitter at the very least. And he's just one of those actors who clearly has a high degree of intelligence and discretionary taste when it comes to what he's doing. But, will fade away in part because people just hate his fucking politics.
Yeah.
And, I just thought, I just thought to myself, we should really think about, how the how the actors kind of shape and move things. Because I think the average person probably thinks of like actors before the people behind the camera anyway. And I wouldn't want to kind of like undermine the fact that, actors kind of really make a difference on a lot of things.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I remember first coming across James Woods in a review by Pauline Kael in The New Yorker. She was talking about the film True Believer, which is about a lawyer from the 60s who in the 80s is just trying to make money. And he's working with a young assistant played by Robert Downey Jr. This movie was like in 86, right? And James 89? Okay. And James Woods was this attorney. He had been a civil rights attorney of some sort, and he still had a ponytail, right? And he was just this shyster, this lawyer that, sort of like of ill repute, but he got this case and he sort of like, it was like his one last hurrah kind of thing. And of like really trying to get justice for this victim. And Pauline Kael said that there was something about James Woods that he was so intelligent, which is the case. I mean, James Woods actually went to MIT. He never graduated, but I think it was just a couple of credits short of graduating. He was a very, very intelligent man. I mean, he is. And that's the thing about James Woods that's always been interesting, that in all of his roles, you see a really, really smart man behind those eyes. Okay, and that's the thing that was always kind of riveting, because you always got the sense that he had a lot of plans in motion, that there was a lot of things going on, a lot of things that he wanted to achieve, insofar as his characters, right? And so that made him interesting because you got the sense that because he was so smart and it came through so clearly, you had the sense that he was unpredictable, that he was going to be a step ahead of you, which is a really interesting a vibe for an actor. Because you got the sense as a spectator that you were following him. You weren't able to anticipate anything that he was going to do, which is pretty cool. It makes him feel more interesting, more surprising, even a dramatic role more surprising. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I've always known the presence of James Woods, just given my age. And I had mentioned before, when someone can be a memorable guest star on both The Simpsons and Family Guy, and actually be funny on top of it. That tells you something about their presence. James Wood, to me, what's also interesting about him is he's simultaneously very physical and very intelligent. And I think, like one of the movies I may like the best that he's done, I told you before, was Videodrome, which is a David Cronenberg movie, which is David Cronenberg's most out there kind of body horror / political kind
/ whatever, science thriller, science fiction.
It's very, if you've read like some of the weirder things of Thomas Pynchon and you mix in body horror, that's Videodrome.
Yeah. Okay. I gotcha. I actually haven't seen it.
And the character he plays, and he's really good at this too, he's done it several times, of playing a hyper-intelligent, sleazy character. So the premise behind Videodrome is the character he plays, Max Wren, one of the best character names I've ever come across, is a CEO of a local UHF cable channel. At the time, those young listeners, there was a thing called cable, and it was sort of as close to the internet as you could have gotten. It was like extra channels of just whatever shit was being broadcasted. It was a lot at the early days. There was a lot of DIY aesthetics in some zones of it.
Oh, you're talking about UHS, you mean?
UHF.
Yeah, UHF rather. Yeah. This was before cable. Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, so his whole premise of this, because he's like a little cable channel, what does he do to get asses watching? Well, he puts on sleazy shit. And, like porno, violent, stuff. You think of it like Live Leaks is the best way I could kind of think, give you the impression of what this channel would have been like. Anyway, he's getting bored, and he finds a program called Videodrome, which is basically just torture for nonstop, and he gets obsessed with it. And it starts physically altering his perceptions and his body, because it turns out that Videodrome is used for political purposes. It is an infective signal that the forces in the government are using to control the population, and they want to control people who they think are kind of undesirables of society. And it's a real wild fucking movie. And James Wood is simultaneously, like I said, playing this sleazy guy, but self-aware, and intelligent enough kind of guy. And he's a character who even though you don't necessarily identify with the man, you want to follow what this guy is doing. His perceptiveness of the situation, or even when he's not perceptive, is interesting.
Yeah.
And he does that a lot of times in his characters.
Yeah. The performance of his that is clearest in my mind was a Trivial picture from '87, I think, called Bestseller, where it's with Brian Dennehy, where James Woods plays this contract killer who wants Brian Dennehy, who plays a best-selling author who's blocked. He wants Brian Dennehy to write his memoir, and his confession, his whatever, and he's going to tell him all about how he helped this businessman become very, very wealthy. And the premise is kind of silly, but his performance is riveting. Here's the thing: there has never been a bad James Woods performance. I mean, I cannot think of one. Even if the movie itself is kind of crappy, like Bestseller was a crappy picture. That's why it's forgotten. It's justifiably forgotten. But he's riveting. I mean, you always want to be looking at him. When he played that tiny role of the pimp in Casino, right? That role must have taken, so great. Yeah, it must have taken a couple of days to shoot. I mean, he has just a handful of scenes, but his performance is so strong in that handful of scenes that you understand how a woman as hot as Sharon Stone, and as with all the possibilities in the world as Sharon Stone, and as astute as Sharon Stone, because Sharon Stone, she's not an idiot, but in the movie, she's completely under the spell of James Woods' character, and you believe him, okay, because he's so smart but so sleazy.
Well, that's the dynamic that's interesting in that movie. For those who've seen it, I don't want to spoil it. I'll just say that the character Sharon Stone plays, she is largely identified by the degree to which she can take any high roller, successful man that gets his way to Vegas, twiddle him around her thumbs, extract whatever money she wants, and leaves him crying and dry.
Yeah, high and dry with no money.
And so a powerful woman, yet she is completely mentally enslaved to this low-life guy who looks like they described him as like a caddy at a golf club who has trying to get some next shitty scheme that will take him nowhere. In other words, a complete loser. Yeah. But she's completely under his spell. Yeah. And he simultaneously can play the loser part and the guy who you believe can, Sharon Stone can fall for at the same time, which is fucking hard to do.
Oh, fuck yeah. It's like really hard. Okay, because this was a picture when Sharon Stone she was smoking hot. And far and away, that's the high point of her career. I don't think that anything comes close to that. I think that even she was surprised by the performance she delivered in that picture, okay? Because it really is an extraordinary performance. I mean, her character, Ginger, one of the great, great roles of the 90s, great performances. I mean, she owned the role, she delivered. And it was so incredible because the way Scorsese sets her up, she can get any guy and get any guy to blow all of his money at whatever casino she takes him to. That's why all the casinos love her, because she'll bring in the high rollers and make them lose all their money at the casino, right? And that's why they leave her alone, because she's essentially a prostitute. And she's so astute and so smart, and she just falls for this guy. And you believe that she would fall for him because his performance. It's extraordinary. It really is.
There's a great scene in the movie where she gets married to
Robert De
Niro's character, and it's a marriage of convenience and economics. And during her wedding dinner, she's on the phone in the hallway crying to Lester, the James Woods character. Yeah. And James Woods it's an amazing scene where he's trying to soothe her and says, like, "This is good for us. Don't are you there? Don't make me come down there." And as he's doing this, he is cutting some cocaine and has a prostitute hanging around him in the back, which just simultaneously shows you he fundamentally has no love for this woman in the reality, yet is so smooth at talking to her and keeping her under his leash that he's the ultimate pimp.
The ultimate pimp, yeah. I mean, it's just fantastic performance, yeah. And so, the doctor in Any Given Sunday. Oh man, there is a scene. I mean, really fucking breathtaking scene in Any Given Sunday between James Woods and Cameron Diaz. Cameron Diaz plays the owner of a football team, and James Woods plays the team doctor. And they're talking about two other characters, two players, and whether they're going to be able to play or not. Okay, and there are reasons to have one play and the other not play. And there's this line I always remember. I'm not a complete asshole, he calls himself, or I'm not a complete prick or something. And the dynamic is extraordinary. Okay, the way that those two actors are just really, really good. And there's something else about James Woods now that I think about it. He plays better off of women than men. Or let me phrase it. That might not be the case because he's equally good in all of his performances. But it seems to me that maybe because there are relatively few male actors, who play well with women, who act well. I'm not talking about the sex scenes and stuff like that. I'm talking about like the dramatic scenes. Because the conversation between Cameron Diaz and James Woods, there is zero sexual tension or chemistry or any of that shit. It's business. They are two professionals, and they are talking about two other professionals and trying to figure out a way to handle the situation and everybody get what they want, right? And it's really interesting because James Woods is of course much bigger than Cameron Diaz, but the way they are playing the scene, there's no physicality to the scene. It's all mind. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
He's aces in my book.
There's so many good ones. Like the other film that I always, I feel people may forget this, but he was in Nixon. I think he's playing Halderman.
Yeah.
H.R. Halderman, and what's funny in that he has a number of scenes, he nails it, but he simultaneously, Halderman is the chorus commentator on Nixon's tragedy in several scenes in the film, which he does well. And at other times, he's the springboard of which Nixon can vent his angriest feelings. Like there's a great scene where they're fighting about, or not fighting because they are in agreement. They're talking about how the New York Times is trying to fuck them, and Halderman just becomes the voice of Nixon's worst prejudices. About, he says like, these Jew York City and the Jew York Times and how all these people are out to fucking get him. And it's like he's a great manifestation of that raw hatred that was building up in the Nixon and his supporters, and he allows it to kind of the rage to articulate. And even though it just seems like a scene of rage, I like good rage scenes. If you execute it well, you actually communicate something above and beyond anger. Yeah. At a certain point, and he did it. Yeah. There's another little movie he did.
Hang on a second. I just want to do a quick parentheses. Have you James Woods and Oliver Stone worked on a number of pictures together. Salvador, Nixon, Any Given Sunday, JFK. He was in JFK, right?
No, he was not.
Okay. I'm just thinking this, but I bet that Oliver Stone probably wrote Wall Street with the Gordon Gekko character with James Woods in mind. And probably the studio said, we need a bigger star. and they got Michael Douglas to play it, right? But imagine if James Wood had played Gordon Gekko. I think it would have been. Um, I think it would have been an even better picture. I mean, I think that Michael Douglas did a tremendous performance, but I think that James Woods would have just been a little bit even more over. I mean, I wonder how that would have been. You know what I'm saying?
I can easily see James Woods doing the "Greed is good" speech successfully.
Yo, you don't think that Michael Douglas did it successfully?
No, I did. I think he did do it successfully, but I just think that James Woods would have had an. I'm just interested in envisioning in my mind his take.
Yeah.
And I think he wouldn't have done it like that cold, like Michael Douglas, like greed, for lack of a better, is good. That kind of coldness. I think he would have added like a kind of nonchalance about this. James, I know how James Wood performs. He would have been like, greed is good. I mean, what do we worry about? That kind of tone. It's
Matter of
slightly
fact.
different.
Matter of fact.
Yeah, much more matter of fact. And I think that would have been interesting. And by the way, since you mentioned it, I am looking at the production history. Apparently not. He did not come up as on the short list of people to go into Wall Street. Apparently, the studio wanted Warren Beatty to play Gordon Gekko.
That would have been a good choice.
Stone says no. He initially wanted Richard Gere, but
that would have been a horrible choice.
That would have killed this movie.
Yeah.
And so Stone went to Douglas, despite having been advised by others in Hollywood not to cast him.
Oh, why was he advised not to cast him? That's interesting.
It doesn't say why, but I do think Michael Douglas succeeded in that film.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think that the way he approached him, with the hair and the overall tone, and those were peak years for Michael Douglas. I mean, he did Fatal Attraction, which was terrific. I mean, it really is a good picture. And
I mean, I'm not going to be ignored here, Dan.
Yeah,
sorry.
That was a good line. Yeah. The only thing I hated about Fatal Attraction was the end. That she goes psycho. That was a little bit extreme. And then the alternate.
What was
ending,
the time, right? You have to have like an action scene to end this movie.
Yeah, and then there's the alternate ending where she commits suicide. That was wrong too. I mean, it was like that was a hard movie to end. Frankly.
I honestly, I think the proper ending for that movie, she should have found another John, and the cycle would have continued.
Well,
because it would have showed you how. Because it would have done two things. It would have shown this is a never-ending process, but also all of this raw emotion you think that is, somewhat meaningful. She's like this hyper feeling person. It's as fleeting as anything else. It's just she's so fucked up that she processes it as important, the most important thing.
That would have been interesting. Anyway, but Michael Douglas, yeah, he certainly had his high watermark in that picture.
Since we are talking about actors, I think another thing that I'm looking at Wall Street would have been interesting. Stone gave Charlie Sheen a choice to who to play his father. He picked Martin Sheen, but he said the other choice was Jack Lemmon.
No, Martin Sheen is a better choice.
Well, obviously because it's his own father, so that helps. Yeah. But Jack Lemmon would have been. I don't believe Jack Lemmon as a blue collar guy. I believe him as like a salesman. I believe him as a middle class guy.
Yeah.
I can't see him as a guy who's like working in the union on the plains. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree with you, but I think it was a better choice to have Martin Sheen. That scene in the elevator with the two of them arguing, that was really good. That was really, and I'm not so sure it was acting, to tell you the truth. I mean, no. Maybe the lines were written, but I think that the emotion was real. It was really
dad and son are working out issues in that scene. You could tell.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not in favor of stunt casting. I think it's kind of like a mistake, and frankly, I think they should have. Okay, hand to heart, they should have picked somebody else. Not Martin Sheen, some other actor, not Jack Lemmon. That's a terrible choice. And also he was too old. It should have been like Martin Sheen's age, because Jack Lemmon was older than Martin Sheen by at least a decade and a half. And so, somebody who would have fit in, that was still vital, but, was being left behind. And
I know
who.
I know who Bruce Stern.
Nah, too old. No. That there's something there. No. Again, he's a guy I would not buy as being like a blue collar guy. You know.
Oh no, I would. Bruce
Well,
Stern could do it.
Bruce Dern and James Woods were in a fun picture called Digstown. It's a trivial and stupid movie, but it was so much fun. You could tell that everybody doing the picture was having a blast. They were having a good time. It was a great cast. Oliver Platt was in it. Bruce Dern, James Woods. And the guy from An Officer and a Gentleman. What's his name? The black guy from An Officer and a Gentleman.
Oh,
Louis Gossett
Lou Gossett.
Jr. Lou Gossett Jr. Yeah, he's terrific. You know, I mean, everybody in the movie is terrific, and there's this vibe that they are having a blast. They're basically telling a Shaggy Dog story that's basically a con, and it works really well. It's just extraordinarily well. And yeah, it was a great picture. I mean, no, it was a trivial
Wood has
picture,
done so
but fun.
He has done so many good con men, and one of my favorite is actually it's a little movie that most people probably haven't heard of, haven't seen. It's called Another Day in Paradise. It's basically a road movie where James Wood, Melanie Griffith are two older, like really low rent thieves and druggies, and they bring on a couple of young kids to help them, and it eventually deteriorates into them, not trusting each other, and kind of the group falls apart.
What was it called?
But it's a really great movie. It's called Another Day in Paradise. It's James Woods plays this wonderfully sleazy, like I said, robber, but the kids look up to him, and you can believe that they look up to him. He has a great rapport with Melanie Griffith as his kind of love interest, co-conspirator. And the reason some of you might be interested in it is I know a number of you like Mad Men. I suspect some of you do. Vincent Kartheiser, the guy who played what was his name in Mad Men? The kid who was came from like the upper class. He's the account. Pete Campbell. Pete Campbell. That's his first movie. He's the young kid who they bring on, and he's very compelling. And it's a good group of people. It's like I said, it's one of those motley road movies that I really get a kick out of. And again, James Wood just plays the perfectly wonderful, sleazy con man who's taking people for a ride and having a good time on it until you start to be afraid of him. And that's another skill that few people have. I would say Joe Pesci has it, where you could simultaneously at one point believe, hey, this is a fun guy, I want to hang on with him, and then in a second can turn around and be a believable, terrifying man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you get the sense that he could do some serious damage to you. Yeah. No, look, I think that he's a great actor. He never got big. His career never. He never became Michael Douglas. He never had a huge career, which I can understand because there's something fundamentally. There's something fundamentally off-putting about him. Okay. In the sense that to most normies, he's scary. He's a scary guy because he's clearly a lot smarter than you. And how can I put it? Like Michael Douglas, yeah, he's a smart guy, but you think he's like charming and nice and fun and he'll be welcoming. Whereas James Woods is just going to be staring at you with that smirk and just figuring out how he's going to fillet you. You know what I mean? And I think that ultimately is why he would never be like America's guy. He'd never be a big time actor. Okay, big time movie star. Let me rephrase that because he is a big time actor. I mean, unquestionably, he's a great actor. Let's not mince words about it. The fact that he never got any kind of award doesn't change the fact that he is a great actor, and I think that he beats the crap out of most actors who have won the big awards, Oscars for Best Supporting Actor, what have you, because he really is an extraordinary guy. But what's interesting to me is that, yeah, he's gotten older. He's like 71, I think. And the thing is, his career is over. He actually got fired the 4th of July by his agent. Well, not fired, but his agent basically, dropped him as a client. If you don't have an agent in Hollywood, then you basically don't have a career. Okay, and the only reason an agent would drop you as a client is because you're not getting any offers. So what exactly is the point of, representing you? And by the way, James Woods on his Twitter account showed the email he got from his agent, and it was fucking despicable. I mean, he was
It was a
really.
drunk email. It was a drunk email. You can I think you and I talked about this at one point, not on the podcast, but just between each ourselves. You could smell the alcohol in that thing. There's a way that a drunk email reads, and I'm not talking about just slurring of speech. It's one of those like, hey, it's the 4th of July and I'm feeling patriotic, so I'm going to say, fuck you as a client kind of thing.
Yeah, that's what he said. Yeah. It was a really extraordinary.
It
I
was snotty. It was condescending. You could tell there was hatred building up for it, and he wanted to, stick the shiv in the worst possible way. Not in the sense that it would, you know, handicap James Woods financially. I'm sure James is fine
well, let's hope
financially,
so.
but I mean,
Let's hope so.
I certainly hope so. But in the sense to get, to really give an emotional dig to the guy. It says, hey, I really wanted to say fuck you in as asinine and cruel a way as I could.
Mm. No, I thought that what's his name, the agent was just a mean fuck. You know what I mean?
Well, if Hollywood wasn't a industry built largely on fear, if that man were my agent and I saw that he did that to James Wood, I'd flip ship immediately.
Oh yeah.
But that's to the degree to which you have confidence that you could get another agent. But if I could have another agent,
No,
I
I'd
was
drop him.
that successful, I would drop him in a second.
Yeah.
Wouldn't want anybody like that representing me.
No, because I wouldn't be able to trust such a person. You know.
And James Wood has a lot. There's a lot of just interesting stuff about him in general, right? I mean, not just his politics, which are interesting, and in that he became more conservative later in life. Like I think as I was looking through it, apparently hit one of his early moments of breaking with left wingism is after Bill Clinton fiasco and the way that people would defend Bill Clinton. He said there's something disgusting about it. So he kind of broke away from them. And then over time, he was very critical, I think, of, a lot of, domestic and, moral policies. I think he was raised a Catholic. And I think even recently he's been very critical of the current Pope's kind of overt liberalization of the church. A number of other things. I think he's even gotten to the point now where he has agreed with us, our crowd, on the nature of why immigration is happening, namely its demographic replacement.
Mm-hmm.
He agrees with us on George Soros. Basically, make it very clear that George Soros was a collaborator in the Holocaust and not to be trusted. And people naturally say, oh, you're just spreading conspiracy theories, even though the man publicly said he did that. You know what I mean? So he is as close as to really hard right wing in a entertainment sphere that you could possibly get. And people use that as an excuse of, oh, James Wood's a little crazy these days. And I don't think he's crazy. I think he's just being fairly reasonable and agitated in his environment, though.
Yeah. James Woods tweets a lot. Okay, I follow his account, and his feed is outraged by a lot of things that meat and potato stuff for our side. But he never comes across as mean spirited. He never comes across as somebody stupid or who doesn't know what he's talking about. He's always on the ball, on point. He is a conservative, but like I said, a meat and potatoes kind of guy. He's not, and he's not overly sensitive about shit. Okay, and he doesn't get into Twitter fights, or at least I haven't spotted him getting into Twitter fights. Anybody that hassles him, he just insta blocks him, and he's just fuck it. I don't have to put up with shit. He doesn't have to really. A lot of people on our side say, "Oh, you're a pussy because you block somebody." I don't think so. I mean, if somebody's just harassing you, block them. I mean, I personally don't block anybody because I'm fucking lazy. But I just I understand how having somebody who's constantly antagonizing you on your feed, why would you bother? Just get rid of them. You don't have to put up with this kind of shit. So, but I don't see him getting into Twitter arguments, and he has a sense of humor about Twitter fights. Yesterday, or just today, or yesterday, I forget when, I saw a tweet that he put out, which was a GIF of these two dogs, They were lying there sleeping, and then one of them woke up and then went to the other, and they started barking at each other, like screaming at each other, but they didn't do anything. They just like barked and barked at each other's face, and then like they went back to their corners and they went back to sleep. And he said, every Twitter fight ever. Yeah, he's got a sense of humor about the platform, about what he's doing. I think it's sad that the guy has been marginalized as an actor. The last roles, serious meaty roles that he had, were back in 2011. It was, according to his filmography, it was this picture, which I saw, which is pretty. Everything he does is very good. The Too Big to Fail, that was in 2011, and Straw Dogs, but I didn't see that Straw Dogs, so I don't know what happened.
Yeah, I didn't see that one either. And even though I liked Too Big to Fail, I'm trying to look back and think what's the last big film he did that I think that I would say like, yeah, that was a substantial movie that I liked watching. And honestly, it's probably Any Given Sunday, even though it's a minor part.
Yeah. It's a real. I mean, he worked all through the 2000s. But,
yeah, he found stuff to do for sure.
He did the Rudy Giuliani story.
Yeah, I remember that, but I mean I remember that he did it, but I don't remember the movie because I don't think it's memorable.
Mm-hmm. No, I didn't see it. I do know that he didn't he get like an Emmy for that, or at least nominated for that.
Probably did.
Yeah,
at least you're right. At least nominated, but let's see here.
Yeah. So look, his career has faded. Okay, and I think that a lot of it has to do that fade accelerated with his conservative politics, and yeah, it must be just very frustrating the fact that your politics can wreck your career. Okay, it just must be very, very annoying. It must be very annoying to realize that if you want to be a major star, you cannot have the wrong politics, because back in the day, Jimmy Stewart and John Wayne could be conservative and nobody batted an eye. But now you can't.
Not only that, and this is going to sound trivial, but I don't think it is. Jimmy Stewart, very strongly conservative. His best friend was Henry Fonda, very strongly liberal.
Yeah.
They got along.
Yeah.
They were legitimately close friends. They said the only time they ever really would get into a fight if politics came up, so they tried to avoid it.
Yeah.
But they tolerated each other. They lived and worked together. And I don't think if even Henry Fonda, who honestly, by your fruit, you're going to know them. Look at his kids, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah, they're all fucked up.
They are really fucked up people. But, I have no doubt in my mind that Henry Fonda would not have sold Jimmy Stewart up the river for any political reason.
No.
I know. It's almost as close to knowing for a fact as I could that I know he wouldn't have done that.
Yeah, I completely agree. There was a conception previously that differences in political belief was not that the other person was bad. It's just that they both wanted the same thing, but just saw different paths to the same thing. They wanted the betterment of the society that they lived in. And they just, one thought that a better society could be achieved this way, the other that other way. But to my point of view, it seems as if the left has just decided that it wants a different society altogether. Okay, and I think that. Well, you see that. You see that by way of how they reject people who disagree with them politically, because it's no longer a shared objective, but different means of achieving that shared objective. It's just different objectives, and so that makes sense. It makes sense for the left to be rejecting and ostracizing people who don't conform to their political opinions, because their politics is about ultimate goals. And James Woods obviously does not want the ultimate goal that most of Hollywood does want,
What's interesting about that, and I give him credit, I think there are very few people now in or related to the Hollywood milieu who are open about their conservative politics. And only one, I think, currently has maintained his career despite it. That's Clint Eastwood. But Clint
Eastwood is untouchable.
Clint is untouchable, and everybody knows it.
Yeah.
But James is honest about his opinions, and it cost him. The other guy who's honest, and it's sort of costing him, but sort of not. And he's not really an actor, and he doesn't really fully belong in Hollywood. Is David Mamet. David Mamet recently has been very open about his turn to hard conservatism. Admittedly, his version of it is heavily influenced by his Judaism.
Yeah, neoconservative.
Not so much. I mean, a little bit, but not really. I mean, you really well.
I don't trust him for David Mamet.
The one thing about David Mamet, the one book he wrote that I thought was completely, abysmal was his book on Judaism and Israel. He basically operates under the assumption that everybody hates the Jew and it's their fault and everything. And I would say that's an self-reflective view on the matter. But when I look at his take on conservatism, it's mostly domestic conservatism and anti-government, anti notions that you can organize the economy and the society centrally. He doesn't get too deep into the foreign policy stuff. It happens from time to time, but it's not his really big talking point bugaboo. I think culturally he just hates liberalism and busybodies. And remember his play that really always caused a shakeup on whenever it was performed, Orleana, which was about, is basically sexual politics on campus.
Yeah.
And I've been meaning to see that play. I've read it, but I feel like I have to see it performed to get the vibe that everybody says about it. Because they say they said relationships would come apart after watching that play. People would get into fights in the lobby after watching that play. I have to fucking see how it comes across performed. They filmed it not too long ago, Orleana, with James. Is it James Macy? Not James Macy's. Peter H. Macy. William H. Macy. William H. Macy. I eventually would get to the right name.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. Orleana is a difficult play for me to watch because I lived that experience. Okay, of the campus politicking and the pig-headedness of feminists and who have the power to destroy people's lives by way of campus allegations that cannot be disproven. And there's a whole mechanism to find men guilty. And so for me, it's very, very difficult to watch that movie. And because when it came out, it was roughly around it was in the 90s, the movie, right? And I was like in the after effects of that thing that happened to me. And so
right.
I was like not in mentally in a good place to see that stuff. And then later, as I've grown older, I just realized I don't care for David Mamet. I think that his dialogue is mannered. I don't think it's as cool as everybody thinks it is. It's like your opinion of Sorkin that that you think that it's not that great. Yeah, that's the same with me and Mamet. I don't think that it's that great. It's interesting, I suppose, but it just doesn't. It's just a kind of hard-boiled Raymond Chandler kind of style. With a little more literary pretensions and a little bit more thoughtfulness to it, but it doesn't really do it for me. I don't think that it's it's the best thing since sliced bread.
We'll have to disagree on that one, in part because you've just described exactly what I think, not just of Sorkin, but of Quentin Tarantino as well. I think David Mamet's the real deal on that front. I would to anybody who wants to agree or disagree with us, I would suggest watching Glengarry Glen Ross and The Verdict kind of two.
No, I'm not saying that he's a bad writer. Okay.
No. About Glengarry Glen Ross, the musicality of the language, you'll determine whether you like it or not if you watch Glengarry Glen Ross.
Yeah, but like for instance, I think that Elmore Leonard's dialogue does the same thing but better.
Maybe.
Okay.
I don't think so.
Well, there's the other thing. You always get the sense with David Mamet that he's like intellectually pretentious. Okay, that he wants, there's something fundamentally desperate for approval. Okay, approval from some sort of like authority figure. Okay, but anyway, we don't have to talk about it. It's kind of like boring. But the how do we get onto David Mamet from James Woods?
Well, the conservatives, about the people who are overtly conservative.
Well, yeah,
I can't think of anybody else.
Vince Vaughn is overtly conservative. He hasn't gotten a good job in years, decades probably at this point. Mel Gibson, of course. Now, the thing is, what's interesting about Mel Gibson is that they're scared of him because he's a principal at Icon Pictures. And Icon is a very, very big company. Mel Gibson is one of the richest men in Hollywood because he is an extremely sharp businessman. And from the early get-goes, he was always very wise with his money, and he got in early on distribution. And as I understand it, I could be wrong, but I understand that Mel Gibson's company, Icon, is one of the major film distributor in Australia, and also a production company and all the rest of it. I mean, it is a big deal, okay? And it has the power to seriously hurt any studio that crosses them. Yeah, sure, in just one market, but at this point in time, studios want every dollar that they can get. And so, the ability to really hurt a studio insofar as its distribution in some continent. I mean, Australia is a continent, right? Because it's Australia and New Zealand. They don't want to fuck with him. I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, that's why he could get away with saying, the whole anti-Semitic rant and telling his ex-wife that she was gonna get a train from a bunch of black men, right? And of course using a very nasty language to describe it, right? And he's still left standing and be a conservative, right? But I mean, if Hollywood had its druthers, it would do to Mel Gibson what it has done to Vince Vaughn. Notice the only major role Vince Vaughn has had has been in that Mel Gibson picture that came out a couple of years ago.
Hacksaw Ridge, I think it was, yeah.
The Hacksaw Ridge, yeah. Because
what's interesting also of Mel Gibson's conservatism is that it does not really belong to any traditional politics. It belongs to his religion.
Yeah.
It is, he if you really look at what he, says on various things, he doesn't really care about tax policy per se, or at least he hasn't pronounced anything on it. Foreign policy, not so much. It's all about the moral attitudes that the traditional Catholic upbringing he has led him to. That's where his conservatism lies. That's obviously that's what Passion of the Christ kind of manifests. It's also what Apocalypto manifests. We talked about how, that image at the end, the salvation for the natives was the Catholic Church, not the other way around,
Yeah. And so, look, I think that, every cultural institution in America has gone liberal. And every cultural institution in the Western democracies has gone liberal, has gone hard liberal, okay? And these institutions all squeeze out any conservative members. And here we have James Woods. You can realistically argue that James Woods is one of the best actors of his generation. He did Once Upon a Time in America with Robert De Niro. And who was the other one of the three gangsters? It was Robert De Niro, James Woods, and I forget.
There are two lesser actors, unfortunately, but Joe Pesci is in the movie.
Yeah, okay. And he more than held his own. Okay, easily held his own. Okay, I mean, it was like, he is a great actor. He is a great actor. And well, his career, he never was going to be like a major star because he has that unlikability factor. That makes him a great actor, but at the same time makes him hard to be lovable. You can't like embrace him like the public embraces, say, George Clooney or John Wayne or whomever, right? Like Robert Mitchum. Robert Mitchum was sort of like that, and Robert Mitchum only became like a really big actor, with The Winds of War and that thing, right? Because Robert Mitchum there was always that edge to him, that edge of danger of like he was gonna fuck you up. Right.
Well, remember, he was also one of the first actors to get busted for pot.
Yeah, that was pretty damn funny.
And it's not like, these days where it's like, hey, the hippie dippy bullshit. No, it just came across as he was cool enough to do it.
Yeah.
He was he's more of a beat actor to some of the later hippies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though the hippies kind of look up to him, he's a little harsher than those guys. And there's just something about there's so many stories I've heard near the end of his life. Like I think Jim Jarmusch was saying, when he was on Dead Man, they would say they would go to Robert Mitchum and says, "Hey, Mr. Mitchum, how are you feeling today?" Worse. and then he'd say, like we were talking, he says, "Well, when I made my first $1 million, I bought a big horse farm, and I had all these horses in there. But now when I look on it, I see it as nothing more than $1 million worth of horse shit." And it's like, he is such the coolest man who probably ever acted in front of the screen. that's a risky statement to say because there's a lot of cool actors, but he was the real fucking deal. If you ever, that's another actor I always recommend who just by virtue of his capabilities overcomes the creative influences in front of and behind the camera. Not to say that the behind the camera creative forces in his movies were irrelevant, but he has that charisma to add to it. Specifically, I'd recommend to those who haven't seen it, Night of the Hunter, which is Charles Laughton's only film, and that is as kind of Southern Gothic insanity as you can imagine, and he's effectively the boogeyman.
Yeah. Yeah, and that great speech of that he had tattooed on one hand love and the other hand
love
hate.
and hate.
Yeah.
The right hand, left hand. This was the hand that Cain used to lay his brother low and everything. And that scene, almost verbatim, is stolen from that movie and transplanted into Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, but the thing is, it's not like Spike Lee was doing it underhandedly and hoping nobody would notice. Okay.
No, he was overtly referencing the movie.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Of course. Yeah, and it was, and also the actor he had play it looked and sounded a lot like Muhammad Ali, which is kind of interesting.
Yes.
It added like a whole other layer there. But he was clearly, I mean, yeah, because the way you said it made it sound as if like, ooh, naughty Spike Lee. But yeah, it was a great scene, and what he did, I thought actually worked. I mean, it added to the original Robert Mitchum thing, but of course, nobody could play it as cool as Robert Mitchum. I mean, even if they had gotten Muhammad Ali in his prime to do that scene for Do the Right Thing, it still would not have been as cool as Robert Mitchum doing that scene. But okay, so let's talk about like the interesting actors, the truly interesting actors. They never become stars now, do they?
That's right.
Yeah, because they always have to be a little bit bland. A little bit bland.
I would say I'm gonna caveat that a little bit because I think I'm being unfair to certain actors. I think at an earlier generation of Hollywood, you could be that superstar and a legitimately interesting actor, and I would rattle off Jimmy Stewart, Cary Grant, Humphrey Bogart, Jimmy Cagney. Mm-hmm. Those are guys who are the superstars, and they're always arguably playing a version of themselves, but they're all very fucking interesting. Mm-hmm. You do get that period, though, in the following generations. I'd say that generation that was just before the baby boomers and some of the baby boomers, of which James Wood is one, where their whole thing was character acting. And they're like, we'll never be as beautiful or as immediately compelling in a sort of physical sense as those older actors, but we're fucking interesting. And
okay,
that's how
let me phrase it. Is he a dangerous guy? Okay, because Jimmy Woods, Robert Mitchum, they were scary. They were dangerous. You didn't want to fuck with them. James Cagney, Humphrey Bogart, yeah, they could be scary when they had to be, but they were fundamentally lovable. They were like sort of like the heart of gold kind of guy, right?
Not Jimmy Cagney. No. Jimmy Cagney is a scary motherfucker in almost everything he does outside of Yankee Doodle Dandy.
Uh-huh. Well, okay. Well, I mean, then why did he become so popular?
Well, that was the thing. The character just had way too much charisma to be contained. I'd say, "Hey Ma, top of the world" in White Heat, and I mean, remember he smashes a woman's face in, with a few things. But the other guy who does it, Lee Marvin in White Heat takes a boiling pot of water or coffee and smashes it over a woman's fucking face. Yeah. Lee Marvin was a fucking star.
Yeah,
I mean, he was.
Oh man, remember what was the movie where he plays a killer that he's trying to get his money from Carol O'Connor? Oh, they remade it with Mel Gibson. They called it Payback. It was not Vanishing Point. Point Blank?
What? It must be Point Blank, yeah.
Yeah. That was... Lee Marvin was fucking cool. There are some actors that just ooze coolness. I mean, Steve McQueen, oh man, that was the coolest cat in the universe. I mean, that is a guy who was cool. I mean, who could top Steve McQueen? For just raw, just being fucking cool. Because, like, for instance, what's his name? The guy who died, the one from Giant, James Dean. I always thought he was just a pretty boy, kind of faggoty ass kind of guy. Okay.
No, he was too whiny for me. Outside of, I think Giant was his one good movie, but that's because he's not playing the kid. But in the two movies everybody loves him for, Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden, he's just a whiny little boy. He's like, "You're tearing me apart." It's like, fuck off.
Yeah, fucking little
he's
bitch,
not compelling. He is a little bitch, but
Yeah.
he is certainly not cool. I think the only rival to Steve McQueen's kind of coolness, but if you're a Steve McQueen
Clint.
fan, you'll hate the fact that I say that. Not even Clint, Paul Newman. Those were the two rivals at the time.
No. He was too good at two shoes.
No, that's why I know you're a Steve McQueen fan, because you would say that. Paul Newman was not a goody two shoes. Not in Cool Hand Luke. Not in.
Yeah, I saw Cool Hand Luke. Yeah, I mean,
and certainly
what
not.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
To communicate. Well, that's the other thing. That's the rebels that you had at the time. You missed them, because what gets Cool Hand Luke in the shithouse is he goes around sawing off all the parking meters, not taking any money from the parking meters. Just fuck you for having the audacity to charge us for parking our cars. And that's how he gets to the shithouse.
Yeah, well,
very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's Paul Newman. I always found him kind of like sleazy, kind of like low rent, kind of cool. Steve McQueen was cool. Okay, I always got the feeling that Paul Newman was cool to unsophisticated people. Okay, people who didn't know any better. And admittedly, my memory of Steve McQueen is severely colored by the Thomas Crown Affair, where he plays a fairly unique character, because he plays a very educated, very rich guy, very quiet and very in control, who pulls off the perfect heist. And it's a great picture and great performances by Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway. It's just an amazing chemistry between the two. If somebody said that they had an affair during the making of that, I would not be surprised at all. I mean, because they just really, connected. They really clicked. And, Steve McQueen was just a fucking cool guy,
I don't disagree.
Yeah. But Paul Newman was like cool to like the blue collar guys down at the bar. Okay.
I think that's a way too dismissive. I know. I think like the movies that he's known for being cool are legitimately cool. I think Cool Hand Luke is a legitimately cool character. That's a hero that everybody should feel comfortable rooting for. In that
he was a loser.
Sense of like, no.
I don't know.
No. He was the unconquerable spirit.
The unconquerable spirit. No, that's Steve McQueen jumping over the barbed wire barricade in that motorcycle.
That's a reduction of physicality, and that's not really how you become unconquerable. You become unconquerable mentally as well as physically.
Yeah, well, he was in the cooler for months and months, and he could handle it.
And that's because he was bouncing his little ball across the wall.
Yeah. No, he was cool. He was look. It doesn't.
I don't want to knock. I feel like I have to knock Steve McQueen for the sake of the argument. I don't want to give people the impression I don't like Steve McQueen. I really do like Steve McQueen.
Yeah, he's fantastic.
But I just don't like. I wouldn't knock Paul Newman either. Yeah, and Paul Newman, especially, he played a cool older guy as well. Even if he's playing, the loser who's going to absolve his, find a path to absolve his sins, he's cool. Like in The Verdict, that's a very compelling character.
Yeah, that was a compelling picture, and it's sort of sad that it got basically remade with Tom Cruise and Martin Scorsese directing it. It was the same goddamn picture, but it was better the first time around. Sidney Lumet did a better job than Scorsese in bringing that character across. You know what I mean?
Oh, no, you're talking about The Hustler.
No, I'm talking about The Color of Money.
Yeah, that's what I meant. The Color of Money is the sequel to The Hustler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because The Verdict is, for those of you who don't know, and lots of people don't know at this time, Sidney Lumet directed the I think it was David Mamet who wrote The Verdict, and it was basically about this lawyer he's a drunk, and he is assigned a case, and he's assigned it so that he'll lose it. And he sort of like pulls himself together and does a really
even more than losing it. It's not just losing it. That it isn't to lose. He's assigned the case because they know he'll walk away with the low settlement.
Yeah.
In fact, they construct the settlement so that it would be a nice even number for him, percentage-wise, because he's going to get a third of the cut. And he knows he's a loser attorney. He's fucked up. his buddy brought him this case just so he could have enough money to just walk away and kind of just wither and die.
Yeah.
And he recognizes that, like I said, the settlement was structured so that he would get that even number payoff. He knows he's being bought off, to a woman who died from malpractice. Like,
wait, hang on. Sorry, what happened was that I was thinking of some pictures of a woman that had been beat up, and then I remembered it was from. I was confusing it with "And Justice for All," the Al Pacino picture.
Oh, yeah. That's another good one.
Yeah, that's a good picture. Yeah. No, that wasn't Sidney Lumet. I forget who directed "And Justice for All," but yeah.
Probably Sidney Pollack.
Well, who knows?
I'm willing to bet.
Well, I don't.
Norman Jewison. Sorry,
Norman Jewison. Yeah, I don't feel strongly enough to. Well, Norman Jewison directed Thomas Crown. Yeah, and he also directed Moonstruck. That was a lovely picture. That was such a lovely picture. I mean, it was just so cheerful and happy, and it was like a happy Italian family living in Brooklyn. It was a great and great performances. I lost my girlfriend. I lost my hand. Johnny has his girlfriend. Johnny has his hand. It was just so fucking funny. I mean, it was back when Nicolas Cage was cool, But you can lose coolness, by the way. That reminds me, though. You can lose coolness. You can lose it, okay? Thank God Jimmy Woods has never lost his coolness. He is unblemished in that regard. Like Steve McQueen went to his grave cool, Even his last picture, the stupid bounty hunter picture, he was cool, There are relatively few people who can say that. And Jimmy Woods, pushing 70-something, right? 71 right now, he's still cool, He's a cool guy. And yeah, because I think that there are some people who lose their cool, who stop being cool. And Nicolas Cage is one of those.
Well, a guy who, similar to James Woods, has occupied the role of like that kind of can be a dangerous but cool guy, yet managed to be a superstar of that generation, is Jack Nicholson. By a lot of measures, Jack Nicholson shouldn't be the biggest star that he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's an ugly as sin motherfucker.
Yeah, he's got a creepy smile.
He plays really kind of creepy smile, the creepiest smile, the creepiest smile.
Yeah.
He plays morally ambiguous characters all the time. He is very much an anti-authoritarian figure in like a real sense of the term. Yeah. Yet he is probably one of the best superstars around, arguably the coolest guy in the room always.
Yeah.
And, just manages to hold on. Now, admittedly, recently he's kind of stopped acting, but I think that's self-imposed as opposed to some people punishing him. You know what I mean?
Well, there's the vibe that he was always very careful with his brand. That he wasn't going to do stupid shit later in his career, the way that Robert De Niro did. Robert De Niro just, he's just made a hash of his legacy with all the crap that he's made over the years.
Analyze this, analyze that, meet the fuckers, all that kind of shit. Yeah.
Well, no, I'm not even talking about that. Like that crappy money grab with Al Pacino, the pedestrian story that he did there, the one with Marlon Brando and Edward Norton, which, by the way, that should have been one of the most amazing pictures ever. The three best actors of their respective generations, and it was just this pedestrian bullshit. It was just such a bad picture, man. It was just depressing. Everything that De Niro has done post Heat has been kind of like garbage. I mean, I can't think of one picture since '95 that's been any good. You?
I'm looking it up, but it's a bit part, and he directed the movie. I do, and I know you don't like it, so I don't give a shit. The Good Shepherd, I think, was a crappy
movie. Yeah. But,
okay, well, I know you think so, but that's because you're a peasant at heart.
I know so. Hey, who comes from some like Polak village, God knows where, huh?
You mean who's the Sarmatian, aristocratic Polak and Russian?
Yeah, right. Okay, but no, seriously. And of course the role in Jackie Brown, which was '97. Okay, fine. But really, for the last 20 years, he's just been collecting producer fees because he's always an executive producer on his picture, just so he can collect a $1 million fee, because that's his quote, to be an executive producer, and he insists on being an executive producer in all his pictures. He just wants to make a lot of money. He's just a money whore at this point. Whereas Nicholson has always been very careful about doing the roles for the right reason. When he did that picture with Adam Sandler, and this was before Adam Sandler, just went downhill. It was back when Adam Sandler really had pull with the kids. Nicholson did it specifically because he thought that he could get like, like sort of like grow his audience into the next generation. It was a calculated move. It wasn't just for the paycheck. Also, I think that Nicholson has been smarter than De Niro insofar as his money, and also, Nicholson is rumored to have one of the most astonishing modern art collections. I mean, like really world class shit. I'd love to see that collection, by the way.
Well, I think also part of the reason Nicholson is a little bit more self-aware and knowledgeable than others is Nicholson started off as a writer.
Yeah.
And is actually a pretty decent one.
Yeah.
All things considered.
Yeah. It started with Roger Corman. Yeah. But the word I hear is that he's sort of like a hermit in his place, and he's just like, just waiting around for death.
I heard he's very in a kind of a deep depression from what I gather.
Yeah.
Like he I think I said that before. He's convinced he's going to die alone.
Yeah, it's kind of sad, and it's kind of sad to be that concerned with death, to tell you the truth. I mean, like moving on to a very weird. I mean, this has been like an all over the conversation kind of podcast, and so, listeners, if you don't like it, well, tough. That's us, and if you like it,
don't
pander to them. Yeah. Anyway,
don't be sad about the fact that we talk about actors and going through different machinations of it. Well, people know who we are.
Yeah, but this is the thing I want to talk about. I personally don't understand quite the fear of death. Okay, I'm not saying it like to be faux tough or any shit like that. I hope that my death is painless because I don't want to be suffering when I die, right? Because I wouldn't want to have the experience of pain, because I'm a chicken shit. What am I going to say? That's me. I want to avoid pain as every other living organism on the planet wants to avoid pain, right? But apart from that, my thinking is that, death is just like sleep. I mean, you just turn off, and that's that. And that was the end of your time, and it's game over. And you die. That's over. And just as there was a period of time where you did not exist, there will be a time when you no longer exist. And what you had was the period of consciousness. And if you're a believer, you can think to yourself that there will be something afterwards. I myself do not believe that there is going to be anything afterwards. I think that this is it. And, you just hope that you leave the people you care about in the best situation possible, materially speaking, so that they can flourish and they can have babies of their own. But other than that, I'm not particularly concerned with that. So when I hear stories of people like Nicholson, who apparently you say is, from what you understand, is afraid of dying alone, I don't understand that at all. I mean,
I think you may be interpreting it the wrong way. I don't think he's saying he's going to die alone in the sense that he's afraid of death and no one's going to be there to comfort him. I think it's more along the lines of he's sad with the life choices that he made with regards to his human companionship.
Well, how could I put it? Regret serves no purpose. I mean, it really doesn't. Let's suppose, for the sake of argument, that you made wrong choices. Okay, that you made wrong choices with your life at different spots, at important spots in your life, and you torpedoed certain relationships that you shouldn't have. Right? Well, first of all, those relationships, it's never over until you're dead. So you can just pick up a phone and make a call and turn those relationships around and get back in touch with those people. Because, like, for instance, with this chick, Angelica Houston, I bet that he actually liked hanging out with Angelica Houston. He wouldn't have had her around for so long if he didn't like her as a person, as just somebody to talk to and have a dinner with, And so it's never too late to pick up the phone and make the call. Now, insofar as, your regrets that, you should have done this or should have done that, well, shit, man, you can't change it. So what exactly is the point of dwelling on it? You see what I'm saying? I just don't understand that mentality. It's just, and like a lot of times people, like, after the fact, they regret that they ended a relationship or what have you. But my thinking has always been, often as not, that in my own case, when I have ended a relationship for whatever reason, at the time, it seemed like a good reason. And uh, later, when I'm nostalgic about that relationship, I sort of like consciously make an effort to think, well, why exactly did I end the relationship at the time? And I start to remember the reasons, and they were good reasons. And so I'm like, oh, this regret, it's really just, falling for the sunk cost fallacy. Okay, that's what it really is. You spend so much time and effort in a relationship and it didn't work out, but you think later, you forget the problems and you think to yourself, oh, if only I'd fixed it. But no, no, no. Back at the time, you probably ended it for a good reason. It wasn't just, you rarely end a relationship for capricious reasons. At least I certainly don't. And so I don't understand this regret. In my own life, I know of one specific moment that I failed to do something that I regret. And it was a relatively minor thing. Actually, it was a very minor thing. And that's something that I really regret. Overall, I don't have any regrets because everything I did at the time, it seemed like the sensible thing. If information later happened that made me realize that it was the incorrect decision, well, nobody has a crystal ball, okay? Back in 2011, I had the chance to buy 2,000 Bitcoin for like $500 or something, or $4,000. I forget how much it was. It was cheap as dirt, right? And I had the chance to buy this block of this shit. And I thought at the time, this bullshit Bitcoin, it's just a fucking scam. It's worthless shit. It's tulips, right? And I didn't buy it, right? And of course, now I regret it, but it's regret that I didn't have a crystal ball. At the time, my decision was rock solid. It was a good and smart decision. So no regrets. You see what I'm saying? I mean, when I say that I regret buying Bitcoin, it's more like, oh yeah, I regret that I didn't buy the winning lottery ticket. But there's no fucking way I could have foreseen the winning lottery ticket. You see what I'm saying?
I think the notion that you should live with no regrets is fine on paper. I think it falsifies the complexity of reality, and I don't think the regrets people are really stressing out about, even though some people might. It's not so much the, oh, I lost this money opportunity, that money opportunity. I think some people do have regrets around, dramatic life choices, and it isn't even tied to one particular person. I think it could be tied to an attitude you had at life that didn't pay out in any material way, or something you thought was fundamentally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And for Jack Nicholson's, I think, I'll relate it again. We're talking about actors. I'll relate it to a movie he played in, which I think is fantastic. It's, think back to Terms of Endearment. Think back to his character, Garrett Breedlove.
Mm-hmm. Great picture, great performance.
He was, exactly. His character breaks off a developing, fruitful relationship with Shirley MacLaine, the lead protagonist of the film, not because she did something wrong. It says that he didn't want to be bound in a relationship. He didn't want any commitments. He didn't want to feel owned. I don't want any more bitch bites up and down my back, kind of thing. And that's the attitude where I like that. Jack Nicholson said a little bit of something about himself, even by accident, in that movie. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the regret that he has is like an attitude towards other people that you can't easily kind of take back. And I think it's a category well beyond a lost revenue opportunity. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the reality is, yes, ideally speaking, avoid having as many regrets as you can in order to preserve the quality of life that you do have while you still have it. I think the reality of human beings is that regrets manifest themselves. It's just the way people kind of are, because people are aware and intelligent enough to question their reality and the metaphysics of their reality.
Mm-hmm.
So the but-for scenario is always going to be there because humans are just the animal that is that capable of doing it. So from that will spawn regret. It's it's the nature of the beast.
Well, I don't know. I honestly am not a regretful person. Like I said, I have one regret, and I'll tell you what it is. I failed to hire somebody that I should have hired for a project I was working on. And there was this individual that I should have hired. And had I hired him, I would not have had problems. But also, I should have hired him, and I didn't think to hire him for reasons that were stupid at the time. And I sort of like knew that they were stupid, but I still went ahead with it anyway, of not offering him the job. Okay. And had he been the person there, he would have been happy. I would have been happy. And on top of that, a problem that arose later because of the actual person I did hire for the position would not have occurred. Okay. So it was just a mistake I made. And at the time, it was a clear mistake. And retrospectively, I see now that trivial mistake had huge consequences because it was a project that I had invested a lot of time and effort into that, failed to come to fruition as happily as I would have wanted it to. And it was my mistake. I should have gone with this person. And so for a variety of reasons, I realized that's my mistake, and that's my regret. But in the scheme of things, it was relatively minor. I mean, in the scheme of my life, it was minor. Okay, it wasn't like a big thing. It wasn't like I murdered somebody and I'm regretting it or something like that. Okay, but how could I put it? I think real regrets are when, at the time you make a decision, you know that it's the wrong decision, and you go along with it anyway. And I guess what's happened in my own case is that whenever I suspect that I have a bad decision, I get sort of like, I start procrastinating. And not moving forward with the decision I need to make, because it's sort of like my subconscious is telling me that it's going to be the wrong decision. And eventually I sort of like confront this procrastination and, just put hand to heart and say, okay, what do I really have to do here? And often as not, the actual decision, the right decision pops right up, and I do it, and there's no procrastination. There's no hesitation. I instantly do it, and all good. You see what I'm saying? So, but that's just me. I understand that there are a lot of people who, are filled with regret for different things that they did in their lives. And I understand that I understand intellectually that there are people who come to the end of their lives and are filled with regret. I understand that. I think it's foolish, but, sometimes you can't control the emotions that you're experiencing. I mean, you can't control the spontaneous emotions that you're feeling. You see what I'm saying? I don't know.
Yeah, that was my take, is that you just, given the nature of the human condition, regret's just going to happen. Especially for certain folks, who made certain decisions, they just lend themselves to it. It's unfortunate. But you know what I don't regret?
What?
Watching James Wood movies.
Yeah, neither do I. And so with that, we've gone on an hour and a quarter. So we're going to call it a podcast. And this has been an interesting turn insofar as this conversation. But I want to thank you very much, dear listener, for having put up with us as we wander around from acting to metaphysics, I guess. And and so Dr. Benway, I'm going to leave you with the task of giving our audience a fond farewell. What are your final thoughts, please?
Watch James Wood's great performance as a pimp in Casino.
Yeah, that's
and then drop 3 hours of your life. He's in it for only 10 minutes at best, but it's a good picture.
It's a good 10 minutes, and it's a good picture. Yeah. Okay, so with that, thank you very much, and we will catch you next time. Take it easy.